Raising Good Humans. I have the biggest, very best pleasure to introduce Erica Rowsell, a dear friend of mine that I met in Adelaide many moons ago. Our worlds collided on many different levels, particularly that both our boys started school together at reception. Erica has had a interesting but an amazing journey with her son Edan, who has Aspergers. But originally, before she was the mother of Edan, she was an Essex girl. Essex. And she was a midwife and a nurse. And now she has a health and wellness business with her husband, Greg. But particularly why we're talking to Erica today is to talk about her journey and integration into community with a child with Asperger's. From my experience with Erica and where the journey started, the diagnosis wasn't even there. So I'm going to hand it over to Erica. And just welcome, Erica.
Thank you, ladies, and it's a real privilege to be on here talking to you. So thank you for inviting me on.
Pleasure.
And so what I'm looking forward to actually is because a lot of the people that we've spoken to have very young children, so they're at the start of their journey. So this interview is going to be amazing because how old is
Edan? He's nearly 15.
I know.
So yes, this has been a journey that's been going on a long time.
Yes. So particularly, I mean, you might want to go a little bit more into your background and then just start off about the journey with Edan.
Yes, would you like me to start at the very beginning of the journey with Edan?
Please. We may interrupt if we like the things that you're saying. But
yes. Okay, fantastic. Well, yes, I was a nurse and a midwife, and I'd recently finished my midwifery training when I had Edan. So I was expecting a beautiful, natural midwifery birth, and that didn't happen. So right from the word go, things were a little bit different. He was an emergency C-section. He was breech. He ended up in the intensive care unit. So all sorts of things went wrong. But I think I knew that there's something wasn't quite right with Edan from the word go. You know, us mothers have that instinct. We have that gut instinct, and we know. And really, we have to act on that, and we have to keep pushing on that to get some answers. So we went along, and I kept thinking there's something just not quite right with this kid. He doesn't do the stuff the other babies do. He was a late walker, and our journey really started when at age 3 I really was worried about he'd walk a few steps and then fall over. And I remember a particular day we went to see a paediatrician, and he referred me to a physio, or the other way around. I think we went to see a physio, and we were just a distressed family. We'd all had gastro that night, so you can imagine, distressed family, all had gastro, and a physio said, there is something very wrong here with your child. And as you can imagine, as a mother, that was extremely distressing to hear, but started us on our journey. So the long and short of it is we went to see a paediatrician who laughed at me and said, oh, I bet you think it's Asperger's, don't you? Ha, ha, ha. And I said, well, you know, there's lots of signs. And he referred us to a psychologist, and he referred us for OT. Anyway, so the first diagnosis, if you will, happened at about 4.5. And of course, as any parent who's been through an emotional experience, I remember that day like it was yesterday. So we went to see a very experienced psychologist, and her findings were that she came back with something called DAMP, so DAMP, which is a delays in attention and motor planning. So he had a form of motor dyspraxia. He also had attention issues. So she basically said at the time, I think he's got ADD, ADHD, plus this motor dyspraxia as well as some other stuff. But they also found that he was of highly gifted intelligence at that time. So we had this double sort of feeling of, oh my gosh, this child's got these issues which we knew about, and he just was so off the planet in so many ways. But also, wow, he's gifted in some areas. How are we going to deal with all of this? So it was.
I just interrupt there, Erica.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this. We were having a conversation with my son before, and his memories of Edan, and his first memory is the science experiments. So Luke used to love going over there because of the science experiments.
Yes, he forced me. Well, he forced me to do science experiments with him from the youngest age, and we just don't know where he got all these ideas from. It was quite incredible because I hadn't done any preschool anything with him.
Well, I think that's why it was so conflicting for you, because I know there was, in the classroom, there was problems with what I call vanilla kid learning, and yet he was doing these amazing experiments and understanding the whole concept behind it.
Yeah, very much so. So it's, I now know that this is called twice exceptionality. When a child has some kind of learning disability or issue, plus they have another issue that can also be a problem for them. Like, giftedness isn't always the blessing that it sounds it's going to be. It can actually be a problem for them as well. So it's called twice exceptionality, and I've learned this recently, and it can be very, very hard for these kids because there's such a difference between what their ability is and what they can do because of learning disorders and social issues, etc. So it's been quite an interesting journey. So we followed on from...
going back to when you first initially got the first diagnosis.
So the first diagnosis, we're like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with this? A relief as well that there was a problem, because the most frustrating thing for me as a parent was people telling me, oh, he's just a boy. And as a mother, no, he's not just a boy. Some of the things we're experiencing are not just the norm. Yes, the boys are boisterous and all over the place sometimes, and so are girls. It's not just a boy thing. And he was a non-sleeper, which, if anybody has experienced a child that does not sleep at night, that's a journey in itself on its own. So we went along, so 4.5, so fantastic that I found this out. And that's where the wonderful acts of kindness and help started for us. I found out about a lady who was the gifted coordinator of all the primary schools in the area, because I thought, how do we help this kid? And I knew the social issues were there, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do for this? And we had some wonderful OT therapy as well. Wonderful, absolutely. I can't thank the OTs enough for what they did and how kind they were to me, because
And was this in Adelaide?
This was in Adelaide. This was before he started school. And, we'd had so many acts of kindness up to that time. And, as an emotional mess that I was, I just needed people to be kind to me and help me. So I found this lovely gifted education lady, and she gave me the biggest piece of advice. She said, first of all, I don't know how you found me. You're not really meant to have any access to me until they start school, but fantastic, you did. And I thought, great. You've got to be.
I was on a mission.
I was on an absolute mission, and look, most parents are. If there's something not right with your child, you will do anything and go on an absolute mission. And so her best piece of advice to me was, we are not perfect in the education system. We try our best. Things get through the cracks, but you have to be an advocate from this point on for your child, and you have to push, and you have to be there, and you have to be seen at the school. And so, sorry.
Advice, isn't it? Because I guess you go through the process of, like you say, a bit of relief because you've been looking for so long. And it's nice to have someone say to you, it's okay to push for your son or your daughter.
Yes.
That's probably another hurdle that people who aren't used to being that type of person have to jump up. So you've kind of been given permission to be able to do that.
That's right. And I'm not a very assertive person. I don't want to rock the boat. I like to keep the peace. So I had to go way out of my comfort zone to really push for things, but in a very pleasant way. That's been such a learning for me, that to be mindful of these people who are doing their jobs to have compassion for them. They are busy, they're overworked, they're underfunded. So to come from that place as well. So yes, that was such good advice for me. And I changed what I was doing with my work. I was lucky enough to be able to do that, because she said you have to be visible at the school to get the best outcomes for your child.
Yeah.
So we did that.
We'd probably like to highlight in the real world, like, you're visible, and of course, and you're having to put your story forward to the teachers, but all the while you're actually feeling anxious and scared and fearful because you've got the tiger mum protection going on, and you don't know what's. So holding that all together is a huge skill in itself.
Yes, and I wasn't holding it together at home. I was holding it together. Yes. Yeah. But yes, we have to hold it together, and it was such a tough time. And I was still working as a nurse, and I had to put him in before school care at like 7 o'clock in the morning or whenever it opened. And I was just an emotional mess, because his emotional level was so young still. His maturity level, that's a better way of putting it. He had this high intelligence, but this very, very low emotional and maturity age. So I didn't know what was going to happen to him when I dropped him off at before school care. And of course they did their best, but I was just a nervous wreck. I'm a slightly anxious person anyway, and worried about everything. So I was just an emotional mess.
For other mums who are watching, who have got their children who have started school this year or who are preparing for kinder or school next year, what does being an advocate for your son, what does that look like? Does that mean that you made appointments with the principal or certain teachers, just so that they've got a bit of advice on how they can do that for their children?
Yes, fantastic question. I went in to see, I had meetings with everybody that was involved in his care. I made friends with the receptionist.
Yes. Yeah.
I was very pleasant and nice to everybody I came across in that school, from the tuck shop ladies to the principal. So yes, I made contact with everybody that was involved in his care. I offered my time in the classroom, and I was there every morning to drop him off and have a word with the teacher. Every day. Now, if you can't do that every day, then, a couple of days a week is just as good. I was there after school to pick him up. But I offered my help, and I enlisted them in helping me by letting them know that I was very, very, very grateful for what they were doing for him. And I really valued their experience as a teacher, and I really valued, their experience as a principal, and I enlisted them to help me. How can you help me? Can you help me? And I had to be very vulnerable as well. And I had many, many, many tears. And, and I think that was a really good thing to be, is vulnerable, ask for help. Yes. I had no family. I have no family in Adelaide. I have my sister now, but I had no family, nor did my husband. We were a lone unit. So we had to get help outside of school, and I asked people's advice, and I asked people to help me. So I think, being an advocate, and if something hadn't gone quite right or something hadn't been actioned, I'd just go to the school and look, sorry, I know you're very busy. How's that coming along? Is there anything I can do to assist that process? Yes. And I found that I got help rather than resistance. Had I have gone in there and said, look, this is your job to do this for my kid, you're not doing it, do it, you just get resistance back. And so we've kept that philosophy going all along, and are still using that to this day.
And so then from Adelaide, what grade did you leave to go to Brisbane?
We left in grade 3 to go to Brisbane. So
what happened just before that?
Before that, we went on to a social skills training with Edan. This was probably the worst experience of my life. With a psychologist who initially diagnosed him as this DAMP syndrome and ADD. And she ran a social skills training. I think it was about 6.5. we were with the most amazing teacher at the time, Miss Vivi, the most blessed person to come into our lives. We were blessed. She's the most amazing teacher in the world. And oh my gosh, I get so emotional. But anyway, so she was in his class, and we went to this social skills training held by the psychologist, which was a group training for the kids. We didn't realize at the end, this meant that all the parents of the children would sit around in a circle while she critiqued each of our child in front of total strangers, and said some quite personal and awful things about each child, which was horrific, and came to our child and said, in my experience as 25 years as a psychologist, your child is the most I've ever seen in need of medicating, and you as parents are doing him a disservice to not medicate him. I was just already being a very vulnerable, emotional, sensitive person, and in this situation, we were totally floored by this. So we went into school the next day and spoke to the principal and Miss Vivi, and they said to me, and I will never forget their advice, please, 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 please do not medicate this beautiful spirit. I mean, they just do not. We can work with him. We can handle him. We will support him. But please don't listen to this advice. It will kill his creativity. Now, I am not anti-medication where it is really necessary. But it was just these teachers who were supporting my son and spent time with him every day were imploring me not to, which is what we wanted. We didn't want to anyway. So that was where we left it. We never went back to see her again. And we had continued with OT. We had a specialist swimming teacher. We enlisted and went into every possible specialist thing we could do. We tried every single natural therapy. We did everything to support our son the way in alternative ways. So then we moved to Brisbane. Oh my goodness. Moving a child with issues, I didn't realise how hard that can be for them. And he was with another beautiful teacher called Ellen, who was amazing with him. And she just sparked his interest in science even more. Just amazing. We have been blessed with amazing teachers. And I think teachers do an absolutely incredible job.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
They are a blessing to this world. And I've only come across a couple of teachers that probably didn't love what they were doing, let's say.
I call them beige. I don't criticise them. I just call them beige.
That's a good word. That's a good word. Yeah.
They're doing it wrong, but just in a beige colour.
Yes. You know what I love about what you just mentioned before you went on? That you obviously, the psychologist was a specialist. So
yes,
you have that support network around you that you have built through kindness and vulnerability and asking for help. You may not have that to fall back on. So
Exactly. And I may have been scared because she said, you are damaging your child by not doing this. He will never, he'll have problems. And we had some terrible experiences in those times with other parents as well, but that's another story. But, yes, our support network and, the support that Melissa gave me and the community she was in at that time was unbelievable. Women coming together in community. Yes, I could have, I wouldn't have had the strength without all of that around me.
It was actually quite unique though, I think, where we were in Grange, because there was a lot of expats or people from different areas, and I think we were all, so I mean my family were closer, but I think everyone, there was a group of us that sort of came together because we had no family, did we?
That's right. Yes, and we didn't know anyone.
And although Luca didn't have Aspergers, it's that needing support of communities. Absolutely.
That's right.
So what actually happened when you went to Brisbane? Did you do any I feel like I remember something significant.
Yes, it was significant. We went to Brisbane and he started school, and in the first few days I got a phone call saying your child has gone missing, we've lost him, he's got upset about something and run away. And I think, you know, as a parent, anyway, the teacher spoke to me a few days later, a beautiful teacher. Now, I don't know how we have managed to score the most beautiful teachers on the planet, but we have. Her name was Annabelle Spate, and I just love talking about these people because they need to be acknowledged. They need to be acknowledged. And she, funnily enough, had training in special needs, and I didn't know this at the time. And she was just his grade 3 teacher, and she'd only had him a few weeks. And she said to me, look, can I talk to you about something? She said, we've got another little boy who is displaying some same stuff as Edan, who has a diagnosis and who gets extra help at this school because of that. And she said, I hope you, she was very nervous about having this conversation with me.
Parents actually go into defense, like this.
Yes, that's right. And she's probably experienced that in her career.
Yeah.
And she said, would you be open to having him assessed by a paediatrician again? And she introduced us to another lady who was the head of special needs at the school. Not special needs, what do they call it? Learning support. I want to get the right words because I don't want to offend anybody, you know. We've got to have the right words here, you know.
Yeah. Last night.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyway, but she was the head of learning support, and they said to me, look, would you go and have an assessment? And I love this story because this is tenacity. You know, she said there's a doctor who's really good. He's a specialist in ASD. And I phoned the offices and they said, you won't, oh my gosh, we've got like a 9-month waiting list, you won't get in. And I said, I will get in. And I will get in. And the head of learning support said to me, I bet you're a Freddo frog, but you don't. It was kind of a little game. So I had great pleasure in phoning her back and saying I got an appointment in 3 weeks. So that was just phoning up the secretary, being very kind, nice and pleasant. Saying, please.
Actually said, I don't like rocking any boats, but there's part of her that doesn't mind it. I think there's part of you. Obviously.
But I love when you say, I will get it, but I ask very kindly.
I ask kindly. I've always been taught to be polite. I think it's the Englishness in me. I apologise for, you know, English apologise for breathing before they speak. I'm so sorry, you know, and then they speak. So, you know, I think I phoned the secretary up and said, please, we're so desperate. What do we need to do? Is there anything I can do? What could I do to get my chances? I'll put, you know, they're a bit rough, some of those receptionists. I'll put you on a waiting list. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. I'd really, really appreciate it. And then I phone up and say, oh, how's that going? I really appreciate it. And she phoned me and I remember the phone call, right, come in next Tuesday, 10 o'clock. I'm like, yes, anything. I'll clear everything. So I remember going in.
Did you get your Freddo frog?
I got my Freddo frog. I'll do anything for chocolate. You know that, Melissa.
So then
So we went to see him. I took an instant dislike to him because he was I'm sure he's on the spectrum himself, you know, but probably why he understands kids so well. And he's a beautiful man. We've just had an appointment with him just recently, and I saw a totally different side, but I was a very uptight, sensitive mother. And he basically said, look, he's Aspergers, you know, we're not kidding ourselves here. Your child has Aspergers. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, what do we do now? And then, you know, I was very lucky to have my beautiful best friend from Adelaide staying with me that day. It just all fell into place, you know how these things do. And I remember saying to her, well, look, it doesn't change him because this is who he is anyway. Yeah. I'm dealing with him.
Yes.
I'm dealing with him. But again, I was grateful for that diagnosis. Yeah. I was grateful for a number of reasons.
Yes.
It explained so much. Mm. It gave me relief. It would help stop the well-intentioned people saying he's just a boy. Oh, my son was like, you know, that sort of thing. I just wanted it, you know, people to understand that there was something, and it also got him extra help at the school and a lot of extra help.
Yes.
Which was a absolute relief. So that's really where our diagnosis was. So he was 9 when we got the diagnosis, and I believe that it's far easier to diagnose at 9. Often these things get missed, or, you know, they fall under the same umbrella. There's a big umbrella, you know, there's so many different things on the spectrum. But the other thing that they found out then, that he was dyslexic. Orthostatic dyslexia, which means he cannot spell. So it was good that we knew that anyway, but
yes,
and all the other motor issues that he was experiencing as well.
Yeah.
So it was just good to finally get, this is what it is.
Now, I do want to go on and discuss where Edan is now, but just before we do venture into that, is there, obviously I would like to know the good and the bad, but we're discussing integration into community. Could you maybe just go through some of the instances where people weren't so kind, maybe some instances where people were amazing kind?
Okay, yes. Well, look, luckily I've experienced pretty much mostly amazing kind. And I think amazing kind started at childcare. A beautiful lady called Margaret took Edan under her wing, realised that he was different, and she used to take him into a side room. She's a childcare worker, took him into a side room and took him through encyclopedias constantly. She was absolutely brilliant. And she even visited us after he left childcare, and she's still in touch with us because she loved him so much. So beautiful kindness. And the other kindness was my beautiful friend Jennifer Martins. Just, oh my gosh, I will cry if I talk about it too much. But she was a friend I met, and this is probably the kindest woman on this planet that you've ever met. This woman does not have a bad bone in her body. She is just 100% heart, compassion, and she just accepted him for all his stuff. And she constantly said to me, you know, she's got an American accent, "You're doing a great job, hon. You know, oh, hon, you're a great mum. Oh, you're such a great mum." Oh, constantly. He's beautiful. I love him like my son. So to have that kindness, and we'd only just become friends, so to have that level of kindness and support was incredible. Now, I will tell you about some of the negative stuff, because it does happen, you know.
And I think it's important that people, I think what would be good if you do pinpoint what happened, but what you feel about it now, but how you reacted at the time.
Yes. Okay. So there was an incident of another mother in the class that we were in. Now, it turns out that this mother was a child psychologist, which made it even worse. And she'd spoken to some people about my son and her opinions of where he should be placed in schools. I'll put it like that. And it was negative about my son, very, very negative. And it stopped people letting their children play with him at the time. It was absolutely devastating for us. I cried and cried and cried and cried, and was so hurt by this. And, you know, I remember sobbing in the craft cupboard, you know, the poor teacher's there trying to start the day, and she's got this mother sobbing in a craft room. And
I think I remember this instance, and this is where I wanted to pinpoint, because interesting enough, there's people in this world that will talk about, oh yes, we'll embrace, but as long as it's not in my backyard.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I actually think we need to create a world for our children that go, we actually include everybody. And
yes, exactly.
No matter the differences, we include, and it might not be comfortable for you all the time, and it might not be to your full potential of learning all the time, but the world's not just about you, it's about everybody.
Yes. And perfect.
No.
So why do we want to try and have our children think that from a young age and protect them? Like everyone's different. Everyone has challenges. Why not embrace that?
That's
yes. And I always say to people, you know, can you imagine what it's like to be the mother of a child that has issues anyway, but is also being ostracized because of their issues? And I think one terrible piece of misinformation that people seem to come up with is that somehow your child's behavior is going to rub off on their child. So they don't want their child mixing with your child. And that happened from a very, very early age. I could see it. I could see the social, the non-acceptance of his behavior. And his behavior, he did have tantrums. He did throw himself on the ground. He did some way out stuff and he didn't pay attention. But it was none of it was aggressive towards other children. And that's what I've always been told. There is no aggression in this child at all. But it was just that he wasn't the norm, whatever norm is. But that was a very devastating time for us. And that included another lady stopping the friendship between her son and my son. And it was obvious to see, and it was absolutely heartbreaking as a mother. But now where I am and know that most of it has all been kind, I think that to just have compassion for other people as well. You know, I don't know where she was coming from, whether she was trying to help in some roundabout way or whether she needed everything to be perfect in her life so that it was a threat to her, or whether she was genuinely concerned that her child was going to miss out on some learning if my child was in the class. You know, so who knows? But I must say I have received so much love into my life because of my experience. And I would not change it for the world. You know, that it's made us who we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have times changed when you think back 10 years ago and there's probably less of an understanding then?
Yes, I think so.
Have times changed? Are people more, not understanding?
You know, I
know more now?
I'd like to say they have. I was actually on a mum's Facebook group the other day. I'm in quite a few sort of support groups, and there was another mum talking about her young son or something, she was worried about her son playing with somebody who was a little bit out there as well. But this child had a few little aggression things, but he was a toddler. And a lot of people were saying, actually, toddlers can be a bit like that. Just watch them. But, you know, if this child has got issues, please have compassion for the mum. The child isn't doing it on purpose. Just watch them. And please continue to allowing the plays. Please, because these kids have issues socially. So to be then have their social life cut off because of misinformation is devastating.
It's actually lovely to hear that even through the steps and the changes of schools, because I know it's not everybody's experience, but I think you have explained your process in doing that, but not everybody experiences the schools and the kindergartens as accepting or as easy to transition.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm sure there are people out there that are experiencing that at this moment, that they're trying to work out their pathways. And what we will do is also add any links to you so they can actually ask you questions.
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Happy than that. Now, tell us about Edan at nearly 15, because I know what age. Oh my gosh. So I'm interested to see where Edan is.
Well, I cannot begin to believe where he is now. If you'd have told me where he is now, I would not have believed it. He is the most beautiful young man. He is so compassionate. And this was always my thing. This is another myth. Sorry, I get mad about this. This is another myth that kids with ASD do not have compassion. In fact, they have too much compassion, so they have to switch it off, because otherwise it overloads them and overwhelms them. So he is compassionate, he's funny he's got the most fantastic sense of humor, he's clever, he's creative, he's got a beautiful group of friends, he is doing super well at school. Thank you very much for anyone that ever said he wouldn't do. He is doing super well. In actual fact, in grade 6, when he graduated from primary school, proud mother moment, very proud, he got an Inspirational Achievement Award. I was just, it was another one of those sobbing mascara running moments. So he's doing very well. And in actual fact, we went back to see that doctor that we saw him at age 9. We had to get the DSM thing redone for his support to continue at school. Right. So they said it's long overdue, because we've been doing all sorts of other stuff and it's been working really well for him. So we didn't feel the need to go back. And this is when I saw the other side of that pediatrician. Something had changed in his life, or something had changed in our lives, but he was the most beautiful, compassionate man. He said, I am so sorry, I cannot sign this form. His diagnosis is gone. He said, I cannot sign it. He said, I can't. And he said, it would be wrong of me too. He said, look, if it's really going to be desperate that the school is not going to support, and I said, no, they've already told us they will support him, with everything they're already doing. But he said, I can't sign it. And he said, and then he started talking to us about some executive functioning issues in his brain, which is more the ADD, ADHD picture. And he said, number 1, acceptance. Number 2, be kind. Be kind. Be kind. And I'm like, I want to shout this from the rooftops for anyone who's dealing with a child.
Be kind.
With any issues. Be kind to yourself as a mum.
Yes.
Be kind to your child. And it's not always easy. I was a mean, horrible person at times to my child. And I think it's just out of sheer frustration. Be kind to those people who are not kind to you, and be kind to all the support people that are there, because they are there. But be kind to yourself and foster kindness in this world, because that's what this world needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love you.
Oh,
thank you. I tell you, I was not always I was a negative, bitter person for a long time. But when I was growing up, maybe not that bitter, but I didn't really have an understanding. But this journey has given me so much compassion for other people. And in my friendship group, I am part of an amazing community now. I moved into another community of expats, and they have made my life so wonderful. Your friendship group, your community, and your ability to be vulnerable and share your stuff helps build those communities. And women need to have those communities. And, my friends here are so beautiful and accepting of Eden. I've never experienced since that time anyone trying to remove their child from my child's, friendship. So yes, he's an amazing young man. And we also had a another psychologist session a year ago, because I'm always looking at, where's the manual for Eden? I think we'd all like a manual for our child, wouldn't we? Would we all like that? You look it up. Where's the manual? Page 10. This is why he does this. So I'm always searching for understanding of my child. So understanding is really good. I've studied every single personality book on the planet. And I went to see this other psychologist, and he said, look, I think also a lot of these children are misunderstood. They're often highly, highly creative. Now, if anybody out there is creative, and, there is a certain temperament that goes along with creativity. There's certain temperaments that go along with giftedness as well. So it's understanding the whole picture of your child. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And every time you learn a little bit more, it puts another jigsaw piece in the puzzle of the picture of your child.
Yeah.
It's good to do on yourself as well.
Interesting enough, I was saying to Sarah early on, I was just clicking on, often I like to watch an Australian story or a 1+1 before I sleep, because I like listening to those stories. And funny enough, I hadn't listened to this particular one. It was about Aspergers.
Yeah.
And then Dr. I think his name was Dr. Atwood or
Yes.
And he actually said, maybe, just maybe, this is actually the new world of how children will be. And because there is some more creativity. And I think sometimes our world freaks out a little bit when things aren't, I know I use the term all the time, vanilla. But when it's not vanilla, when it's outside the box, people are like, oh, this is not how it fits.
Yes.
Now, I know we could speak forever on this topic. There's just one more thing I did want to talk about.
And I've got one question too.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. And that is that I really want mothers particularly and fathers, because there may be fathers that are the direct carer for a child with Asperger's, is that feeling of that when you are learning about this child and the frustration you feel is to know that you're not the only one to be crying and angry and frustrated and losing the plot. And I just can't, one, I don't want judgment, but also from your point of knowing that, like, how did you become kind to yourself, that you were that person and you had to resolve through it and not feel guilt about it?
Yes, because I did feel guilt about some of the things I did, and I still do. There's still some, you know what I did? I sat him down and said, I'm sorry, I did this. There was this birthday party. This is what your behaviour displayed. This is how I reacted. It was nothing to do with you. It was all my response. So I go back in. I've cleaned up everything. You know, maybe he'll have issues, you know, over it, but I don't know. But I did my best. We are all doing our best. And when we learn to do better, acknowledge that. Acknowledge that, yeah, maybe I didn't do the best. I did that then, but that's the best I could do at the time with the knowledge I had. Now I've grown, and I have learned to be kind to myself, number one.
Yes.
I think this process has taught me to be kind to myself, because the kinder I am to myself, the more loving I am, the kinder I am to everybody else, and it all starts with being kind to yourself. So,
yeah. I just wanted to ask, because I know that you mentioned you took Edan back to the same doctor from when he was 9 and signed the sheet. There will be parents out there with younger children with Asperger's that are thinking, well, how did that happen? What was she doing? Because obviously they will be listening for their own children.
I was doing a lot of things. We had a lot of OT in the early days, and the earlier you can get occupational therapy, the better. If it's before 7, it is the best. So if you're concerned about your child and they're under 7, get help now. Don't delay. And I know it's expensive. We were paying $100 a week for an OT session. We, 8 baked beans to have, just do it now. The quicker the intervention, the better. So don't delay. Don't take no for an answer. Get that, get it done now. But also what we did, we learnt about the gut-brain connection. It's a very, very key thing for us. Yeah. And Melissa got me into this. She started this whole journey. Well, her and my mum sent me a book called They Are What They Eat, talking about food. And it's funny how when you start going on a path, it attracts people in. Melissa came into my life immediately. And she introduced me to a company that has some particular supplements that seemed to help. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but for us, it seemed to help. It helped with behavior and reading, and I knew that the gut-brain connection was so key. So I've set about over the years healing his gut. Plus, I've worked on myself extensively. I've done so much personal development so that I'm a better person, so that I can teach him to be an even better version of himself. I've learned to understand. I've gone on a mission of learning about him and what I can do for him. So I think all those things, plus food is very key as well. I did my best. Hey, teenager now, do it when they're young. Do it when they're young, because, you've given them a good foundation. When they're older, they go down the servo and buy a rainbow slushie without you knowing it. Oh, God. We do our best.
would have you'd have exactly the same reaction.
Yeah, horrifying. So do it when they're young. Do as much as you can when they're young. Be kind to yourself. Know that you're doing your best. Know that every child is different. Every child's on a different journey, and their journey is what makes them. I think it's that acceptance that they bring something to the world. He loves himself. He loves it. He's like, oh, I'm so cool with myself. I'm really, he does have some teenager social anxiety stuff going on at times, but that's being 14. That's normal. Yeah. That's normal. But on the whole, he's really cool with himself.
Oh, that's so lovely. Well, thank you so much, Erica. It's been such a great interview.
And I'm sure we'll have lots of links actually.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'll have a chat with Erica because I'm sure there's some reading to be done, or maybe some podcasts, other podcasts that you'd like to listen to that Erica will be able to recommend. And I actually think that we might even need to get you back when we're talking about autism and Aspergers all week, which will be coming up soon.
I'd love to. Look, it's such an honour to share my story. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. And I do hope that, maybe just one thing I've said today has helped somebody.
Oh, thank you, Erica. We really appreciate it.